Some stories don't begin with a spark. They begin with an ordinary Tuesday, a forgotten umbrella, and a door that shouldn't have opened twice. This is the story of Left with the Coach, a single dad, a quiet swimming coach, and the unexpected love that grew between them when nobody was supposed to be watching. If you love a slow-burn gay romance, a heartfelt coming-of-heart journey, and an emotional connection built one small moment at a time, stay with me. This is Left with the Coach, and it's about to change how you think about second chances. Daniel Reyes had exactly 11 minutes to get his son to swim practice, and every one of those minutes felt like it was slipping through his fingers like water. Milo's shoes. Now. Please. His voice cracked on please, the way it always did lately, tired in a place tiredness wasn't supposed to reach. 9-year-old Milo sat on the stairs, one sneaker on, staring at the photo on the hallway wall. His mother's photo. 2 years since she'd been gone, and the boy still paused there every single morning, like he was checking she hadn't disappeared from the frame too. Daniel's chest tightened. He crouched down, tied the loose shoe himself, and pressed a kiss to the top of Milo's head. "We're gonna be late for Coach Theo," he said softly. "You don't want to miss lane 4, right?" That got a small nod. Lane 4 was Milo's favorite. Coach Theo always gave him lane 4. The Crestline Aquatic Center smelled like chlorine and second chances. Daniel had come to know that smell well over the past 3 months, ever since Milo, grieving and withdrawn, had finally found something that made him smile again. Swimming. And, if Daniel was honest with himself, something about the coach who taught it. Theo Marchetti stood at the pool's edge in a faded gray t-shirt, whistle looped around his neck, dark hair damp at the temples from an early lap. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. But when he crouched at the edge to talk to Milo, his voice dropped into something so gentle it made Daniel's throat ache. "There's my fastest kicker," Theo said, and Milo actually beamed. Daniel lingered a beat too long by the door, the way he always did. He told himself it was because he liked watching his son thrive. He didn't examine the other half of that truth too closely. Not yet. Emotional hook. What Daniel didn't know yet was that in 6 weeks, a single rainstorm would leave his son sitting in a stranger's, no, in Theo's, apartment, waiting for a father who couldn't make it in time. And that night would change everything. If you're loving this gay love story so far, stay close. The real story is only beginning. Theo Marchetti had built his whole life around control. Lane lines. Lap times. A schedule so tight there was no room in it for anything as messy as wanting. 3 years ago, he'd left behind a relationship that had quietly hollowed him out. A man named Adrian who loved the idea of him more than the reality, who flinched at hand-holding in public and called it just being smart. Theo had spent a long time after that convincing himself that solitude was safer than hoping. Then Daniel Reyes walked into his pool deck with a grieving 9-year-old and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept properly in 2 years, and something in Theo's careful architecture creaked. He told himself it was just professional warmth. Coaches cared about their swimmers' families. That was normal. But he found himself noticing things. The way Daniel always brought 2 coffees on cold mornings, one for himself, and, after the 3rd week, one that he started quietly leaving on the bench near Theo's clipboard. The way Daniel's laugh, when Milo did something goofy, was low and real, nothing like the polite laugh he gave everyone else. Theo noticed. And noticing scared him more than anything had in a long time. The Thursday it happened, the sky had been the color of a bruise since noon. Daniel had a work emergency, a client contract that couldn't wait, a boss who didn't understand that single dads didn't have backup plans lying around. He called the aquatic center in a panic. "Theo, hi, it's Daniel, Milo's dad. I'm so sorry, I'm stuck at the office, there's a storm warning, can someone?" "I've got him," Theo said, before Daniel even finished the sentence. Don't worry. Drive safe when you can. I mean it. There was a pause on the line. Something in it, relief maybe, or something softer, made Theo's pulse stutter. Thank you, Daniel said, and his voice broke slightly on the words. I don't know what we'd do without you. Neither did Theo, if he was being honest. The storm didn't let up. Roads flooded. Daniel's calls to check-in got shorter, more anxious. By 7 o'clock, Theo made a decision that felt bigger than it should have. Come stay at my place, he told Daniel over the phone. It's 2 minutes from the pool. Milo's already had dinner. It's safer than you trying to drive across town in this. A long silence. Theo, I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I offered. A small, warm laugh. Besides, Milo's currently beating me at Uno. I need the moral support. Daniel laughed too, and something about that shared laugh. Two people, miles apart, both worried about the same small boy, settled low and warm in Theo's chest. Mini cliffhanger. What Theo didn't say out loud was that this wasn't the first night he'd imagined Daniel in his apartment. He just never imagined it would happen because of a flood warning and a losing hand of Uno. Daniel arrived just past 9, soaked to the bone, apologizing before Theo even got the door open. I'm so sorry, the roads were a mess. He stopped. Milo was asleep on the couch, curled under one of Theo's old university hoodies, like a blanket, one hand still loosely holding a fan of Uno cards. Something in Daniel's face cracked open at the sight. Not sadness. Something gentler. Gratitude with nowhere to go. He's been out for 20 minutes, Theo whispered, waving him in. Get out of those wet clothes before you catch a cold. I'll grab you something dry. Daniel opened his mouth to protest. Then didn't. Theo's apartment was small, warm, lined with bookshelves and old swim medals, and a single photograph of a much younger Theo standing beside an older woman with the same dark eyes. His grandmother, Daniel would learn later, the woman who taught him to swim before teaching became the only love language he trusted. Daniel sat at the kitchen table in one of Theo's old sweaters, sleeves too long, and something about seeing him there, soft-lit, unguarded, wrapped in Theo's clothes, undid something in Theo that 3 careful years hadn't managed to protect. You didn't have to do all this, Daniel said quietly. I wanted to. Theo poured 2 mugs of tea, hands not quite steady. I like having you here. Both of you. The words hung in the air a beat too long. Daniel looked up. Their eyes held. Emotional WTF moment. Neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. And for the first time in 2 years, Daniel Reyes felt something other than grief crack open inside his chest. Something that felt dangerously, impossibly like hope. They talked until midnight. Not about swim times or schedules. About real things. Daniel told him about Elena, Milo's mother, gone in a car accident that still visited him some nights as a sound rather than a memory, a screech of brakes he couldn't unhear. He told Theo about the year after, when he'd forgotten how to make himself dinner, how Milo had been the only reason he got out of bed some mornings. He stopped talking for 4 months, Daniel admitted, voice low. After. The doctor said it was normal. Grief does that to kids sometimes. But nothing worked until the water, Theo finished softly. Daniel nodded, eyes shining. You gave him his voice back. Do you know that? You gave my son back to me. Theo's throat tightened. He gave himself back. I just held the lane line. That's not true, Daniel whispered. You held both of us. Theo told his own story then, carefully, the way you unwrapped something fragile. About Adrian. About learning that love could be conditional, could ask you to be smaller, quieter, less. About choosing the pool instead, where at least the water never asked him to hide. I didn't think I wanted this again, Theo admitted, staring into his tea. Any of it. Wanting someone. I got good at not wanting things. And now? Daniel asked, so quietly it was almost lost under the sound of rain against the window. Theo looked up. Now I'm sitting across from a man wearing my sweater, and I can't remember what I was so afraid of. Higher tension hook. The rain hadn't stopped. Neither had whatever was building between them. But some doors, once they crack open, can't simply be closed again, and neither man was sure yet if they wanted to close it. It happened at the door, an hour later, when the rain had finally eased enough for Daniel to consider the drive home. Milo was bundled in Theo's spare hoodie, half asleep against his father's shoulder. Daniel turned back at the threshold to say thank you, some ordinary, forgettable sentence, and instead found Theo closer than he expected, close enough that his next breath caught somewhere in his throat. Theo, he said softly. Yeah. Neither of them said anything else. Theo's eyes dropped, just briefly, to Daniel's mouth. Daniel's breath caught. For one long, suspended moment, the space between them was the only thing in the world. Then Milo stirred against Daniel's shoulder, murmuring something half asleep, and the moment folded gently back into ordinary air. Get him home safe, Theo whispered, stepping back first. His voice was rough. Text me when you're there. Daniel nodded, throat too tight for words, and walked out into the softening rain with his heart doing something it hadn't done in 2 years. For 2 weeks, they orbited each other carefully. Coffee at the pool. Small talk that meant more than it should have. A text that said made it home safe that turned into a 40-minute conversation about nothing and everything. Milo noticed before either adult admitted anything. You like Coach Theo, he said one evening, matter of fact, spooning cereal at the kitchen counter. Daniel nearly dropped the pan he was washing. What? No, buddy, we're just... You smile different when you talk about him, Milo said, with the brutal clarity only a 9-year-old possesses. Like how you used to smile in Mom's pictures. Daniel set the pan down slowly, throat tight. Would that be okay with you? If I liked someone. Liked? Milo shrugged, entirely unbothered. Coach Theo's cool. He taught me to not be scared of the deep end. A pause. Also, he makes really good grilled cheese. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, wet at the edges, and pulled his son into a hug that said everything words couldn't. Reveal. What Daniel didn't know was that across town, Theo was having an almost identical conversation with his best friend Priya, who'd known him since college and had watched him build walls brick by careful brick. You like him, Priya said, not a question. Theo didn't deny it this time. I'm terrified, he admitted. Not of him. Of how much I want this to work. Good, Priya said gently. That means it's real. Milo's swim meet fell on a bright Saturday in October, the kind of golden, cool-air day that felt like the whole town was holding its breath in anticipation. Daniel arrived early, nerves fluttering for his son and, quietly, for himself. Theo stood poolside in his coach's polo, clipboard in hand, but the moment he spotted Daniel in the stands, something in his posture softened. He's ready, Theo said, coming to stand beside him at the railing. He's not just fast, Daniel. He's fearless in that water now. You should be proud. I am, Daniel said. Then, quieter, of both of you, honestly. Theo turned to look at him, surprised. Me? You gave him his voice back, Daniel said. You gave me something too. I just haven't had the courage to say what. The starting horn blared. Milo dove. The whole pool deck erupted into cheering. But Theo's eyes stayed on Daniel a second longer than they should have, and in that second, courage found him first. Tension release. Milo touched the wall in first place, arms raised, grinning wide enough to split the sky. And in the chaos of cheering parents and splashing water, Theo reached over and took Daniel's hand. Just for a moment, just enough, and neither of them let go until the noise had settled. If this gay romance story is giving you butterflies, don't forget to like this video. We're only halfway through Left with the Coach. They ended up on the same bench they always did, watching Milo celebrate with his teammates, sun low and honey-colored across the water. "I need to say something," Theo said, voice unsteady in a way Daniel had never heard from him. "And I need you to let me finish before you say anything back, because if I stop now I don't think I'll ever start again." Daniel nodded, heart hammering. "I spent 3 years convincing myself I didn't want this," Theo said. "Any of it. A partner. A family. I told myself the water was enough, that teaching other people's kids to swim was as close to belonging as I'd ever get." His voice trembled. "Then you and Milo walked onto my pool deck, and every single thing I built to protect myself started falling apart, piece by piece, and I didn't even mind. That terrified me more than anything ever has." He finally looked at Daniel directly. "I love watching your son become brave in the water. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with watching you become brave too. I think I'm in love with you, Daniel. Both of you. If that's too much, tell me now, and I'll never bring it up again." But I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Daniel didn't answer with words first. He reached over, cupped Theo's jaw gently, and pressed their foreheads together, breath shaking between them. "You're not too much," Daniel whispered. "You're the first thing in 2 years that hasn't felt like drowning." He kissed him then, soft, unhurried, the kind of kiss that isn't about hunger, but about arriving somewhere safe after a long, long storm. Theo's hand came up to rest against Daniel's chest, right over his heartbeat, like he wanted to feel proof that this was real. Down at the pool's edge, Milo, dripping and grinning and utterly unsurprised, simply turned to his teammate and said, "Told you." Love, they both learned, wasn't a single golden moment. It was Tuesday grocery runs where Theo instinctively grabbed Milo's favorite cereal. It was Daniel learning to swim laps beside Theo at dawn, laughing every time he swallowed pool water. It was slow Sunday mornings, pancakes, and a hallway photo of Elena that Theo never once asked Daniel to take down, because he understood love didn't require erasing what came before. There were hard days too. A tense conversation with Daniel's mother, who needed time to understand. A moment when Adrian, Theo's past, resurfaced with an apology that tested old wounds. A night when grief hit Daniel sideways, and Theo simply sat with him in silence, holding space instead of trying to fix it. But every hard day was met, not alone, but together. Emotional payoff. 6 months later, on a quiet evening by the very pool where it all began, Milo cannonballed into the water yelling, "Race you both!" And Daniel and Theo, hand in hand at the water's edge, looked at each other with the particular, unhurried joy of two people who had finally, fully, stopped being afraid. "Ready?" Theo asked, lacing their fingers tighter. "Only if you race Milo," Daniel said, laughing. "I want to watch you lose for once." Theo grinned, the real one, the one that had once terrified him with how much he meant it, and pulled Daniel in for one more kiss before diving in. This is Left with the Coach, a story that began with a storm, a forgotten schedule, and a single dad who had no idea that leaving his son at the coach's apartment would lead him home to a whole new kind of family. A heartfelt gay love story. A healing journey. A slow-burn romance that reminds us love often finds us exactly when, and where, we least expect it. If Daniel, Theo, and Milo's story moved you, remember, every quiet act of kindness, every hand held a little too long, every small brave choice, that's how real love stories begin. You asked for it, so here it is. Left with the Coach continues, because falling in love is one thing, but choosing each other, over and over, through the hard days too, is where the real story begins. If you're new here, Daniel, a grieving single dad, and Theo, a guarded swim coach, found their way to each other through a stormy night, a sleeping 9-year-old, and 6 months of quiet, brave love. Now comes the part nobody shows in the highlight reel, the part where love has to survive real life. Spring came early that year, and with it, an email that made Theo's hands shake as he read it standing in his kitchen. Congratulations. The Regional Elite Coaching Program would like to offer you a full-time position in Denver, beginning August. It was everything he'd worked toward for a decade. Better facilities. Olympic track athletes. The kind of career move coaches waited a lifetime for. It was also 900 miles from Daniel and Milo. Theo sat down slowly at the table, the offer glowing on his laptop screen, and felt something he hadn't felt in months, that old, familiar instinct to protect himself by staying quiet, by not making anyone else carry his hard decisions. He didn't tell Daniel that night, or the next. Mini cliffhanger. For the first time since the storm that brought them together, Theo Marchetti started keeping something from the man he loved, and silence, he would learn, has a way of becoming its own kind of storm. Milo noticed everything. He always had, ever since the year he'd stopped talking and started watching the world instead, cataloging every small shift in the adults around him like it might warn him before the next loss. Coach Theo's sad, he told his dad one evening, swinging his legs at the kitchen table. He smiled at practice today, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mom used to do that. Before. Daniel's stomach dropped. Sad how, bud? I don't know. Milo shrugged, suddenly small. Just far away sad. That night, after Milo was asleep, Daniel drove to Theo's apartment without calling first. He knocked twice before Theo opened the door, surprise and something like guilt flickering across his face. Hey, Daniel said gently. Talk to me. Please. Whatever it is. Theo's shoulders dropped. He stepped aside to let him in, and for a long moment, just stood there, unable to find the words. I got a job offer, he finally said. Denver. Elite program. It's the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice. Daniel went very still. When did you find out? 4 days ago. The hurt on Daniel's face was immediate and unmistakable. 4 days, Theo. And you didn't say anything? I didn't know how, Theo admitted, voice cracking. Every time I tried to bring it up, I kept hearing this voice in my head telling me that if I said it out loud, it would become real, and if it became real, I'd have to actually choose, and I don't know how to do that without losing something. So you decided to just carry it alone, Daniel said quietly. Like I wasn't someone you could carry things with. The words landed harder than either of them expected. That's not fair, Theo started. Isn't it? Daniel's voice wasn't angry, just achingly tired. Theo, I told you things I've never told anyone. I let you into the messiest, most broken parts of losing Elena. I thought we didn't do this anymore, the hiding. Theo flinched. Old wounds, Adrian's voice, years ago, telling him to keep things smaller, quieter, rose up uninvited. I'm not hiding you, he said, quieter now. I think I'm hiding from how much this decision could hurt you. Both of you. And I didn't know how to hold that without falling apart. Daniel's expression softened, the hurt not gone, but making room for something else. Then let me help you hold it. That's what this is supposed to be, Theo. Not perfect. Just together. Emotional WTF moment. For the first time in their relationship, they didn't solve it that night. Theo said he needed time to think, really think, and Daniel, throat tight, eyes wet, nodded and drove home to a house that suddenly felt too quiet. They didn't talk for 3 days. Not a fight, exactly, more like two people standing on opposite banks of the same river, both afraid to be the one who reached first. Milo felt it. Kids always do. Is Coach Theo still gonna be my coach? He asked at dinner on day 2, pushing peas around his plate. Daniel's throat tightened. Of course, buddy. Whatever happens with grown-up stuff, Theo's not going anywhere from your life. I promise you that. But even as he said it, Daniel wasn't sure how big a promise that was to make. Across town, Theo sat on his balcony with Priya, staring at the Denver offer letter like it might rearrange itself into an easier answer. You're allowed to want the job, Priya said gently. That doesn't make you selfish. Then why does it feel like I'm choosing between the two things that finally made me feel alive? Theo's voice cracked. The water. And him. Priya was quiet a moment. Maybe, she said slowly, the real question isn't water or him. Maybe it's whether you actually believe you deserve to have both, a full life and a full love. I don't think you do. Not yet. I think some part of you is still waiting for the day it all gets taken away, so you keep one foot out the door just in case. Theo said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Theo let himself into the aquatic center after hours, the way he sometimes did when his thoughts got too loud. Moonlight lay flat and silver across the water. He sat at the edge, feet dangling in, and thought about the first time he'd seen Daniel standing nervously by the door, and the boy who wouldn't speak, and how much had grown from that single ordinary Tuesday. He didn't hear the door open. Figured I'd find you here, Daniel said softly, footsteps echoing on wet tile. Theo looked up, startled. How did you? Milo told me this is where you go when you're scared. Daniel sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. He knows you better than you think. They sat in silence for a while, water lapping gently against the tiles. I'm not choosing between you and the job, Theo finally said. I realized that tonight. I think I've just never let myself believe I could have a whole life. Every good thing I've ever had, I learned to expect it to leave. My parents. Adrian. Even swimming some days feels like something I have to earn instead of something I get to keep. Daniel took his hand, threading their fingers together in the moonlight. I'm not going anywhere, Theo. Not because you took a job, not because things got hard. I love you. That doesn't come with a countdown. Theo's breath caught. Say that again. I love you, Daniel repeated, softer this time, his voice trembling with everything he meant by it. Higher attention hook. It was the first time either of them had said it plainly, without hedging, without fear, and the words settled over the water like something finally, quietly coming home. I don't have to take Denver, Theo said, a week later, over breakfast at Daniel's kitchen table, Milo humming to himself over cereal nearby. I talked to the program director. There's a satellite coaching position here, smaller, but real. I'd still get to build something. I don't have to choose between the dream and you. I was just too scared to ask if there was a version where I got to keep both. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You didn't have to give anything up for us, Theo. I never wanted that. I know, Theo said, smiling, the real smile, the one that used to terrify him. That's exactly why I wanted to stay. Milo, not looking up from his cereal, said, cool. Can Coach Theo come to my meet Saturday then? Both men laughed, real, unguarded laughter, and something in the small kitchen felt, finally, like a beginning instead of a goodbye. That Saturday, at the meet, Daniel's mother showed up unannounced, the same mother who'd needed 6 quiet, careful months to understand her son's new life. She found Theo by the concession stand, nervously watching Milo warm up. You make him happy, she said simply, without preamble. My son? I haven't seen him laugh like that since before Elena. I wanted you to know I see it. And I'm grateful. Theo, caught entirely off guard, could only manage, thank you. That means more than you know. She patted his arm once, awkward but genuine, and walked off to find a seat, a small act of acceptance that felt, to Theo, like an entire door swinging open. 1 year to the day after the storm that started everything, Theo took Daniel and Milo back to the aquatic center after hours. The same pool, the same moonlight, the whole story circling back to where it began. "Why are we here?" Daniel asked, laughing softly, hand warm in Theo's. "Because this is where I stopped being afraid," Theo said. He turned, and in his other hand was a small ring box that made Daniel's breath stop entirely. "Theo, I spent 3 years convinced love only ever left," Theo said, voice steady now, sure in a way it had never been before. "Then you and Milo walked into my life and taught me that some love stays, chooses to stay, every single day on purpose. I don't want to just be someone who is in your life anymore, Daniel. I want to build one with both of you. If you'll have me." Milo, standing a few feet away holding the ring box he'd secretly helped pick out, grinned so wide it looked like it might hurt. "Say yes, Dad." I already like calling him Theo. "Dad has a nice ring to it too, though." Daniel laughed through tears, pulling Theo into a kiss that tasted like chlorine and moonlight and every quiet, brave choice that had led them here. "Yes," he whispered against Theo's lips. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married the following spring, poolside, under strings of warm lights. Priya as best woman, Daniel's mother crying happy tears in the front row, and Milo standing proudly between them, as they exchanged vows that mentioned storms, and lane 4, and the particular bravery of choosing someone every single day. This has been Left with a Coach, Part 2, a story about what happens after the first spark when two people choose, again and again, to stay. A heartfelt gay love story about healing, found family, and the quiet, everyday courage it takes to build a life with someone. Because the truth is, real love isn't the storm that brings two people together. It's everything that comes after. The staying, the choosing, the showing up on the ordinary Tuesdays too.